Good evening, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Echo Series. The Echo Series provides enrichment for New Brunswick High School music students, those who are involved with extracurricular music in any way. We host a conversation once a month on our YouTube channel with professionals who all have some sort of New Brunswick connection and who were involved with music themselves when they were in high school. It is an interactive series where New Brunswick students host the conversation and ask the questions. My name is Brianna Jack, and I'm a grade 12 student and flute player at Nackawic High School, and I'm hosting tonight's discussion about music and your health. If you have a question or comment for the panel, please feel free to comment and we will address it during the conversation. Our first panelist is Meghan McLean. Meghan is a speech-language pathologist from Woodstock, New Brunswick, who holds a Bachelor of Music and Voice from Mount Allison University and a Master of Science from Dalhousie University. She's passionate about creating opportunities for meaningful conversation and especially enjoys working with school-aged children and with older adults with dementia. Meghan currently lives in Truro, Nova Scotia with her husband Nathan and their black cat, Stacey J. Oswald. Our second panelist is Leah Hagerman. Originally from New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, Leah completed her undergraduate degree at Mount Allison University in Sackville, where she majored in biology and minored in biochemistry and history. After graduating, she moved to Ontario, where she completed her Master of Public Health at the University of Guelph. Leah now works as a researcher at the National Collaborating Centre for Methods and Tools, based at the McMaster University in Hamilton, where she specializes in COVID-19 public health research. Outside of work, Leah plays clarinet in Wellington Winds Waterloo and sings with the Guelph Chamber Choir. Our third panelist is Skylar Cameron. Skylar Cameron is an opera singer, marketing manager, and previous mental health worker from Nova Scotia. Skylar completed a Bachelor of Music at Mount Allison University in Sackville and a Master of Music in Performance and Literature at Western University. Apart from training for a career in opera performance, she loves to teach voice lessons and occasionally conduct choirs. Skylar frequently gives self-care workshops, facilitates group therapy, and advocates for LGBTQA+ rights. We'll now begin our discussion. Each question will be discussed for up to 10 minutes, where any of our panelists can answer. Panelists are encouraged to address each other's questions as well. Our first question comes from a student at Harborview High School in St. John. Can you tell us about your involvement in music when you were in high school, and how did you end up in the healthcare field?
I can jump on that one first, I guess, if you folks would like. Hi, everybody. I'm Meghan. And when I was in high school, music was everything. I was involved in my school band. I played the clarinet, not especially well, but I did. And I was in choirs and took every music course that I could take, high school, musical, theater opportunities, things like that. And then on my own, I also took lessons. So I did voice lessons and piano lessons and would be involved in, extracurricular choirs and things. So music was a big deal in high school. And then when I left high school, I wasn't entirely sure where I wanted to kind of go with my career path, but I knew that music was something that I wanted to be a part of it or to inspire it in some way. And I knew that there were lots of different career paths that could kind of come out of a Bachelor of Music. So that's where I started. And then after I finished my Bachelor of Music degree, I took a couple of years and did some work and was trying to think about what would be the right fit for me in terms of my career long term. And I had some health issues that came up in my own life. And so as I was dealing with that, I was thinking about, different careers that are really helpful for people who have issues with their health. And I wanted to be able to help other people the way that health professionals had helped me. So I was looking into things like physiotherapy and occupational therapy. And then I stumbled across the speech-language pathology program and ended up feeling like a really great fit based on kind of the experience that I had as a singer, knowing my voice really well. And I guess as a singer, I was always thinking about how I'm communicating with people or how I'm telling a story. And so this was a career that's really been able to help me kind of do that for other people, just in a different way, helping them to communicate and tell their own stories.
I can join that one next too. I was also super involved in the music program in high school. bands and choirs, did piano. So it was such a big deal for me. But I was also really interested in the sciences, and I loved chemistry class. And so I really debated with myself quite a bit in grade 12, especially grade 12. Do I want to go into music or do I want to go into science? And I was looking at Mount Allison and a few other schools, and both of them offered good programs in both fields. But for me, it kind of came down to it was a lot easier to actually study science and keep music up kind of on my own time than it would be to do music and keep science up. There's just not really extracurricular programs like that. But it was definitely a lot of work to do that. So I joined bands in university, and now I'm in community bands. And so it's something that I hold dearly, but I have to seek it out quite a bit. But I've always been interested in medicine in particular. And then I ended up in public health. I didn't know about public health in high school, but just getting that prevention side. And so I guess I don't always see a lot of crossover between those two interests, which is why this kind of event is so neat for me. But it was just kind of, it ended up being a decision for me of how to keep both of my interests going.
I was also super involved in music. I started voice lessons when I was 6. I was also in piano lessons on and off. I was in a community musical, couple musicals through school. Actually, in grade 11, I switched high schools, going into grade 12 to be at a high school that had more music opportunities for me in my grade 12 year. Because then at that school, I was able to be in a jazz ensemble, an octet, a concert choir. There were just so many more opportunities for me at that school, and it was great. I also was in festival every year since I was 10, competing, and, learning through festival. It was a great opportunity for me. And this is going to sound ridiculous, but I knew from the moment I'm going to say 10 years old, that I was going to go to Mount Allison and do a bachelor degree in voice. I just knew. I think it was actually at festival, Minette Gould was adjudicating me, and I just decided then and there, that's what I'm going to do. I just always felt like, music and singing was my passion, and it was something that I just needed to do. And so for me, there was no humming and hawing. It was just, I'm going to go and I'm going to do this thing. And so, of course, off I went to Mount A, and I did my degree there. And it was an amazing experience. But outside of singing, this mental health side of things just creeped up on me, and I started doing a lot of work in mental health on the side, and then it became a full-time job in the summers and a part-time job during the school year, and it's become surprisingly a side passion. I can't tell. I think I'm more passionate in performing, but really mental health is up there beside performing and singing for me. It's just, I don't know. It's an amazing experience in both of those things to connect with other people and make a difference in people's lives.
Just before we move on, too, just to kind of jump on what Leah and Skylar were saying, too, it just got me thinking that it really doesn't have to be kind of all or nothing when you're looking at kind of what your career path might look like. And for me, I'm working as a speech language pathologist, but I have a lot of opportunities to still be doing music in my life, whether I'm kind of working it in my career or doing it kind of extracurricularly, or, picking up a little side gig here and there. So you don't really know until you get out there what opportunities are available, but there's really been a lot of opportunity to kind of have the best of both.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is from Rossay High School. What effect does your musicianship have on your work in the medical field?
I have an answer for that. I think that for me, being a musician and coming into a health profession in kind of from that context really helped me to kind of approach my work in a really creative way. And to be always thinking of trying those kind of creative solutions, thinking outside the box and bringing my own kind of experiences into my work. So maybe I have a solution that's creative or something that I want to try that's never been tried before. But it really kind of has inspired me to think in that direction. But something else that I think comes from my experience in music is that it's made me a really good kind of member of a team, a really good kind of team player. And that's something that's really valuable in a lot of jobs. But having spent so much time in bands and in choirs where you're really used to kind of tuning into the people around you and working together to make something really wonderful. I'm finding that healthcare, as someone who's just getting into a health profession now and who's recently graduated from a healthcare program, it seems that health is really becoming more and more kind of increasingly collaborative. So there's really a focus on kind of people from all different professions working together to try to help find those best, most holistic ways to help the people who are their clients or their patients. So being able to be a part of a team is really important. And that's something that often being involved in music in high school or otherwise can really help you with.
I think going off of that, I agree with the collaborative aspect so much. It makes such a huge difference. And then also as musicians that worked on solo performances during their undergrad, at least for me, it's also made me a better leader too, because while it's important to be a part of a team and be collaborative, there are times when I've been called on to be more of a leader and more of a performer, I guess, in what I do. And so my performance experience really helps me to perform in many roles that I never even thought possible. I'm so much more capable of using some of my interpersonal skills that I learned through being a musician, and so much more capable of telling my story as somebody that's experienced mental illnesses. I'm so much better at, I think, listening to other people, because we have to use our ears and we have such trained ears as musicians. And so it really makes a huge difference, I think, in any profession you go into after doing a music degree.
I love your answers. And I think that it's all true for me. I don't always even see those benefits. I don't always feel like I'm a musician, so I'm good at this collaboration thing. Like, I still feel like that's a skill that I've really had to work on in other contexts. And I really think above all, what being a musician has been doing for me is that it's given me really good time management skills. Because in university, I would be in classes from 8:30 to 4:30, and then I'd have a lab, and then you have a half hour, and then I had band. And it's like, if I'm going to be in this band, I have to get my work done, and I have to learn everything fast, or I have to I have to get up in the morning on a Saturday. It doesn't matter, because I want to be in this band and I want to be in the musical. And I did all those competitions and the festival competitions in high school. And if I'm going to be getting ready for music festival, which is a ton of work, and also I have an exam that day, this has to happen. And so I think that that's where I really see the most benefits. And I don't perform as much as Meghan and Skylar do. I do sometimes, but even now I'm when I was doing my master's, I joined a community band and we rehearsed 3 hours on a Sunday night. And it always kind of came down to, if I'm not done my work by 7 p.m. on Sunday, just go. And it's been an outlet for me. Can we just do something a little bit different from my schoolwork for a little bit? So all those teamwork skills, I think that they do get applied. I never really noticed that. It must be a subconscious thing. I'm hoping it is. But yeah, it's just having a chance to meet some people outside of your field for me, and just keeping on track with everything I'm doing.
Yeah, and that idea of it being an outlet and kind of having that other piece in your life, I think it's only going to be beneficial the more kind of a well-rounded person you are coming into your field. You're going to be bringing experiences that other people don't have. So yeah, it probably affects us in more ways than I even really think about. kind of like Leah said.
I also think that, studying music in high school as a kid, in university, whether you were in a degree or whether it was on the side, I really think that it fosters resiliency in us as adults. And I think that that's part of the reason why then we can be successful in other fields. Like Leah said, time management, that could be a huge part of resiliency. It can be how we deal with stressors at work. Anything like that. I think that music really is a huge aspect of our resiliency and mental health as young adults.
And like how you receive feedback. And it's not that someone's like, it might be constructive feedback or it might be some negative feedback. And it's not that they don't like you as a person. It's like, I know that I really messed up that one part of my piece in the music festival. And it's like, I understand what I did. I understand what you're saying. I understand what I need to do better. And like, just kind of being able to react to those changes and also be able to give feedback, because like how many times have you been in rehearsal and like there's wrong notes and you haven't practiced and there's things happen. I mean, maybe not too, but it happens to me a lot. And
time.
and just being able to kind of take that and deal with it really efficiently and not let it weigh you down at all is a huge skill that I've definitely gained as being a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and now for a question we've all been thinking about lately from Sophie Baker at Rothsay High. What is the latest research saying about music performance and COVID-19? And how does singing transmit COVID-19 more than speaking would?
Okay, I'd like to jump on that one.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so it's such a good question, and it does not have a good answer. So just to what I do, there's different stages of research where some people are like in the lab or they are disseminating surveys and then they take all the responses, they put it together, and that would be your primary research. So this is one study and this is what they found. And then other studies look at all of the studies that looked at the same type of thing and then come up with an answer. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at all of those big question ones and trying to come up with a big consensus answer. So it's really complicated, and it's really complicated with COVID, where like a lot of these studies take at least a year, and we haven't been in this for a year yet. So there's a lot of huge questions, and we're dealing with research that is, I mean, something that was published in March is outdated at this point, which is ridiculous in any other field, in any other context. That should be quite recent. So I've looked into this quite a bit, and it gets really challenging where to actually come up with some kind of answer, you need to know that the study was well done. So did they actually have a large sample size? Because, whatever the 5 of us or 4 of us are saying, does that really apply to all contexts? Or how would that change if you had 40 people or 4,000 people? And so do they have that study size? Who were they funded by? So things like if you're looking at a study on sugar and it's published or is like funded by Pepsi, you don't really believe the results. So I need to look at that, and I need to look at where was it held and everything. There's a lot of red flags with a lot of the COVID research. So what's coming out is largely funded by music organizations, which it makes sense because, of course, it's music organizations that want the answer and they're the ones that really care about it. But I have to rate it kind of a little bit critically. And the studies are being done mostly in the southern United States, where marching bands are really big, and they don't have winter the way that we have winter. So any guidelines on have rehearsal outside is a great idea in Florida, and just not possible in Canada in February. And then just looking, I'm trying to look at, did they really look at all possible outcomes or all possible like exposures? So, can we really say that A causes B? So we're kind of seeing singing transmits COVID, but we also need to look at what else is happening that can cause that. And so, yes, there are a few studies that are showing really high transmission for singers, because there's been a few studies of huge outbreaks in choirs. But if you've been in a choir, you also know about choir culture, where there's a lot of like singing in a circle. Let's all stand really close in a circle and sing at each other for blend. And let's have snacks, because snacks are like, who doesn't want a snack break in the middle of choir? And you hug people. And it's just like, I think when we were in high school, one of our warm-ups was to give everyone a back massage. And I'm kind of thinking about all the things that go into choir. And I'm like, I'm not sure if it's singing or if it's choir. Like if it's just that general, what do you do in choir? And it's hard to get enough air with a mask on when you have like a 16th note to breathe. And so does a mask really work? And you do project, but I'm not really seeing enough research to say, yes, for sure, it's singing. What I'm seeing is research saying we need to be distanced, wear a mask, be outside when possible, have ventilation. And so it's really challenging. And even for bands, research on like having bell covers, which helps, but then I'm also not sure about the physics of a clarinet where you have all the other holes and the air is going to come out another hole. So does that work? And no one seems to be looking into the spit valve, but that seems like it should be a really big problem more than singing, because it's how it works. And so I don't know. I know that public health guidelines of staying distanced, have good ventilation, be outside is really crucial, but I have not seen any definitive answer to whether any kind of music is more likely to transmit COVID or not. And so all I can say is we just need to follow the regular guidelines as much as possible until we have something a bit more concrete to go off of.
Mm-hmm. Leah, have you, I assume, I mean, you're up on all of this. So the latest thing that I read was on aerosols, and it was the Colorado University preliminary study talking about, the average size of an aerosolized particle, or whatever you call it. I'm not a science gal. It was 1.3 microns. And just talking about how, and the virus is 0.12 microns, and just talking about how aerosol can carry the virus when singing. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that has some merit. I've read the Colorado studies, and I am also very confused by them. Okay. There's a lot of graphs, and
yes,
I'm not sure they're really telling you what you need to know. For instance, like they have the x-axis as time, which makes sense. It's your independent variable. But when we're looking at transmission of a virus, I don't like the way that they've laid it out. I'm reading it, I'm thinking like I don't actually know what you're saying. And so yes, aerosols can spread it. Like if we know that there's person-to-person transmission through talking or close proximity, then that all holds true. I'm still not clear on how that transmits to singing. Like how much is there, or when you're playing an instrument, is there a difference between high brass and low brass? I don't understand what they're getting at.
I agree. The graphs were a little confusing. And so in this study, they, their results was that, oboe transmits more aerosol, is the highest. And then I would say French horn, and then it was voice or projected speakers. So those were like the top three that would transmit aerosol. So aerosol is like, this is going to be my very dimmed down explanation of aerosol is just kind of like the spread or spray that you cannot see, and it can go a long distance and stay suspended in the air for a longer period of time than the large droplets that might fall to the ground or floor closer to you. But yes, this study was saying that that was definitely possible, that singers were super spreaders, and to keep distance, stay masked, and have ventilation, HEPA filters if possible, and stuff like that. But yeah, again, as Leah said, I mean, there needs to be more research done over a longer period of time. and with more numbers, I guess.
More numbers. And I think a big problem that I'm seeing is that, like, musicians aren't usually trained researchers, and researchers don't know how to study music. Like, they're two fields that don't talk to each other. And they don't often need to, like, maybe music therapy or, Megan's speech pathology, I can see there might be some crossover, but in a lot of fields like public health, I do a lot of vaccines and bike helmets. That's not something that music comes into very often. And so I'm really trying to work with my organization to figure out how do we work with researchers. And so how do we explain to researchers what musicians need? Because everyone needs research right now. And this is a huge area. And if we want to get theater back up again, because that's closed for a while, and we really do need to know how much spread there is, and we need it done in a way that my team can look at this and synthesize it and actually get out some guidelines and try to start influencing policies.
Yeah, I certainly don't have anything else to add to this beyond what the two of you, are able to contribute. That's very much less my area than yours, but I know that this is such a hot topic right now, not even just as a singer myself, but as somebody who's working in the school system right now, not knowing what the effects of singing are has a huge effect in the classroom. So much of what happens in the classroom in music class and otherwise involves a lot of music and song. And so I'm seeing it even in my field.
Yeah, and preschool and daycare, and there's a song for lining up. Like, we need to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for the time being, it's just important to be as safe as possible, distanced, following the policies that are in place, whether it's at your school or, something that's been provided or put in place by your government or province. It's different everywhere you go. But, stay safe out there, stay distanced. If you can wear a face shield, could be helpful. I don't know. I think that's just kind of where we're at.
And I think the more we understand about how the process of scientific research works, the more kind of trust that people have in that system. Because I do see a lot in my circles of people saying, oh, well, yesterday you said this and today you say this, and so how do I trust anything? And it's really kind of having that understanding that, research is something that evolves over time as you get better information.
It is. And I think that that's a big problem that we're seeing, where just like research, it's so iterative. There's research, and then there's counter research, and then there's this, and it usually takes 17 years from the time we do research until it gets into practice. And now everyone's seeing research in real time and seeing how messy it is and how much we're just like, oh, let's see what this does. And like, and it's when it's COVID, you're kind of just like, well, that school in Finland opened, so let's see what happened, because we can't randomize people into these situations. And so it's so challenging when the research keeps changing, because we keep getting new data. It's like, oh, it's all different now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, our next question is from Harbor View High. Do you think that music helps your emotional or mental health?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Also, sometimes it can just be really frustrating, and then I need to take a break from it. But yeah, having that outlet, having something different to do every day is really helpful.
I think that being, listening to music, through your iPod or phone can be super useful. And then studying performing music is also another aspect too, right? Because it can be isolating in a practice room alone for long periods of time. It can be isolating, getting critiques all the time. As a singer, I found it hard because my body's my instrument. And so my body and my instrument are being critiqued all the time. And it's not negatives all the time. There's all the positives that go with it too. So that can be hard. But music and studying music itself has been so crucial for my own mental health. I mean, it can release lots of, hormones, endorphins, oxytocin, all of these kind of good feel hormones that help with you to feel more connected and part of something bigger than yourself. So it can really help with depression, endorphins and things that can really help with stress and anxiety. It can be super useful. And that's whether you're a part of a choir, part of an orchestra, collaborating with a pianist or another instrumentalist or singer, or maybe even you're performing solo in front of an audience and you get that immediate feedback and connection that it's kind of hard to describe sometimes. I think that it's really crucial and so beneficial for our mental well-being.
Yeah, I think for me, music is kind of one of many things that is really important for my mental health. And that would include, things like getting regular exercise, because I feel better when I exercise regularly, and getting good sleep, and, nourishing my body well. And all those things are really important, spending time talking to people who make me, who bring me up and build me up, I think. But music is certainly one of those things for me. I don't know if it's innate to music or if it's because music is something that just makes me feel really good and really like myself. And so having that outlet, like Leah said, in music is something that's really helpful for me. If life is really stressful or busy, or if I feel like I kind of need to connect with who I am and something fun that I can do. And I also feel really accomplished too when I learn a new piece of music, or I record something that I think sounds really good. It makes me feel really good. And I think that as somebody who has dealt with depression, I think something that's been really beneficial for me is to see myself making some progress. So rather than feeling like, I'm not getting anything done, or I'm not being productive, or anything that I can do that makes me feel like I'm moving kind of in a forward direction. So sometimes learning a new piece of music might be that thing for me. So yeah, I think it's been really beneficial for my mental health.
Yeah, I agree with that. Even just like when you're feeling a little, everything's kind of not really working, or you're studying for something, or whatever's happening, and you just feel like you're not making any progress, to learn something new is great. And I even like falling back on things that I've already learned a long time ago, and just go to something that is so easy to play. And then it's that quick win for me. So I don't know what else happened today, but that piece sounded great, or I had a lot of fun. And I just feel like it kind of gives me a bit of that feedback that I need, and that positive, I'm good at this, or I enjoy this, or wow, that was fun. I don't know what everyone else thought of that, but I had fun. So yeah, just having that other thing you can do is great for me.
Mm-hmm. And there's also a lot of research out there in regards to singing, and actually even just humming, and, activating the vagus nerve and kind of bringing you into a grounded state. So, say you're really stressed out and you're flailing about, or you're anxious and isolating in your room or whatever, singing and humming can really actually take your nervous system and kind of just go like this and lower everything down and get you into this nice grounded state. So it's also just a useful tool for stress and anxiety and in general. So
yeah, lowers your blood pressure.
Yes.
Yeah. Just like, bring it down.
It's great.
Some students have sent in questions for specific panelists, and for each question, the panelists will have up to 3 minutes to answer. So our first question is from Megan, and it comes from Sam Johnson at Rossay High. He asks, can singing help with speech problems? If so, how?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm really glad that was asked, because as someone who, is very passionate about music in my own life, and who's studying this kind of field of communication, it's something that personally I believe, music can be very therapeutic, both in many different contexts, I suppose. And there's even a field of study that some of you folks may have heard of, and Leah mentioned earlier, in music therapy, where that's the premise of the profession, is that music can be very therapeutic for people who may be in pain or be dealing with various conditions or different challenges in their life. But from my own perspective in speech language pathology, I would say that there are lots of opportunities where we can use singing and music to help the people that we work with, whether it's a speech disorder or another type of communication disorder. All of those things would kind of fall under my umbrella. So, for example, maybe I'm working with a student in a school, and that student has difficulty with language. So, for example, they might have a hard time structuring their sentences. And so we might be working on different grammar concepts, something like that. And if music is a good tool for them in terms of, helping them to remember things, they sing things and it sticks in their head better, we might teach those concepts using a song. Or I know that there's a classroom lesson that sometimes I work on with classes that are in my schools that help kids to learn how to describe things in kind of a more complex way. And we have a song that we use to teach them all the concepts. So absolutely in that sense. But I also might work with an adult who has Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. And for adults who have difficulty with memory, often music and singing is a way to kind of access that reminiscing in, things in their past. If they hear a song from, back when they were newly married or something special in their lives. And we often try to tap into those types of things in order to be able to help them to communicate with their loved ones. But something else that came to mind just as I'm nearing the end of my time here was that it makes me think of working with people who stutter as well. Because one of the strategies that we often use when we're working with people who stutter is helping them to kind of lengthen the vowels in the words that they're using. And as they're learning that technique, it really is, kind of similar to how a person sings and helps them to kind of make their speech more, what we would say fluent. So it's more smooth. And often people who stutter have said to me that they don't stutter at all when they sing. So absolutely, I think there are some connections there for sure.
I can just jump in on that for a second. Megan, that's really interesting what you're saying about memory, because I was just thinking that last year I was volunteering at a retirement residence with a lot of patients that had dementia, and I would lead sing-alongs for them. And it was so interesting because a lot of them I couldn't have a coherent conversation with. They would ask me what I did during the war, and I was like, oh, no, not me. But then I would play these songs that they would have heard when they were in their 20s, and they could sing every word, and they would forget that they needed a walker and be dancing. And it was really incredible to see that. And so neat that you actually get to work with that and kind of understand the process behind that.
It really does tap into kind of a special place in people's brains, I think, and they can kind of access some things that they might not otherwise. Not that that's the only tool, but I do think it can be really powerful for a lot of people.
Okay, so our next question is for Leah, and it comes from Anna Claire Cook at Rothside High. As a COVID researcher, how have you been able to cope with all that's happening around us?
Depends on the day. I guess before I answer that, it's really important just to say that everyone deals with what's going on differently. And I've been to a few workshops on this too, about how some people are doing really well in some areas and some people aren't, and just how whatever you're feeling is valid. And Skylar, I think you can probably speak to this a lot too, just about how people are really coping with any new news. But I guess as a researcher, I read the news very critically. So I get all the breaking news, which happens all the time. The whole meaning of breaking news just doesn't mean anything to me anymore. There's so much happening. But I try to read it critically to understand, what are they saying, what are they not saying, and what can I do about it? So today, Ontario announced, I'm living in Ontario, and the province announced 700 more cases of COVID today, which is really it's really easy to get extremely overwhelmed by that, because that's not good. But then my critical thinking is, what are they saying? Okay, there's 700 cases, but there's a testing backlog. So they're not all from the weekend. So when are they from? What does that mean? Where are we going? So if we're up 700 now, what can I expect tomorrow? Or what? Kind of preparing myself, bracing myself for what's coming. And the what can we do about it is if like my team takes on 1 or 2 new questions a week to just try to come up with an answer. What can we do for policies? And so if we're seeing a trend that cases are rising, I'm looking at this saying, what do we need to do? So we need to look at, when is testing happening? Are we getting testing? Are enough people being tested? Are too many people being tested? How can I use this information and act on it? Because I guess I've learned about myself that I really need to have, like, I need an action. I need to feel like I can do something, and there's nothing I can do about the 700, but I can try to, how do we not let this go up anymore? And doing it that way, and also trying to look at what the news isn't saying. So we had 700 cases, and that was the headline. And then I looked it up and I saw how many people were tested. And I saw that it was only about 1.4% of people who were tested positive, which is pretty good. That means that we're testing the right amount of people. You want it to be between 1% and 3% usually, because if it's too high, then you're not testing enough. And if it's too low, then you're over testing. So we're on track there. Or whenever there's an outbreak in a school, I just trying to look at how many schools are there in the region. So if there's 40 schools in Ontario that have a case, but there's over 3,000 schools in Ontario, what does that mean? And so I'm trying to just make it into these little bite-sized chunks for myself that I can digest and do something with. I guess that's a very research-centered perspective, though, and I guess I don't even know how that could translate to other areas all the time, but just, I guess, trying to figure out what is it that you need to worry about and what do you just need to let go. So if you don't have any control over it, you read it, you say, that's nice, and you move on. Because if there's nothing that you can do about it, or nothing you can do to prevent it, or if there's just nothing there for you, you kind of just need to take it and just, there it goes, and come up with, just wait for the next piece of news to come.
I agree with what you're saying, Leah, that, we're all coping so differently right now, whether, we're working, in the field that you're working in or not. We're all coping so differently. Some days I'm overjoyed and things are fine. And other days I'm like, wow, depression has creeped back in. How is that possible? I have the coping skills I need. I know how to use them. And yet here I am, and I don't want to get out of bed. I have to, but I certainly don't want to. And I think that is certainly challenging. And especially right now, when we're people that we feel better when we're in control of things. And so anything that is outside of our control is really scary, and it feels unsafe. And so, knowing that something is outside of your control and letting go to a certain extent can be super helpful, and controlling what you can. Like, a lot of people are buying new things for their house because they can control their space, and they can make their space so much more cozier and happy to be in. Or, controlling the fact that you can get outside and you can do activities, stuff like that, I think is super useful.
Yeah, and also I think just remembering that if you're anxious, it's okay to be anxious. This is a time that's really hard. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm really good at being able to, the things that I can't control, you have to just let them go. And sometimes I have a hard time and I feel anxious about things, and knowing that that's not a bad reaction, that's not, that it's not okay, but that it's understandable in these circumstances. But we can't always live in that, anxious or difficult place. You kind of have to use your coping skills and let go of what you can.
Exactly.
Okay, so our next question is for Skylar, and it comes from Rossay High School. Is it hard fighting against hate and discrimination towards the LGBTQA+ community in music?
Wow. Yeah, it can be hard. Because homophobia still exists. But, it is getting better every day. Our generation is much better than the generation before. There's much more education, support, resources than there used to be. But it certainly still happens, and definitely in the music industry. But sometimes I think it's just about unapologetically being yourself and creating a circle of friends and colleagues that align with your values. So, creating a safe space for yourself within school or your workplace. So, it's something that you can at least try to create your own little bubble of safety. And while it's important to stand up for yourself, it's even more important to have supportive allies and friends too. Because while it's great to start conversations around it and talk about these things, it's not your job as an LGBTQA plus person to educate people. It's not our job to do that. So just always remember that. And always know that you don't need to disclose your sexuality if you're an LGBTQA plus person. Disclose it if you want to. Disclose it if you feel like you're in a safe space. But you don't have to. Straight people aren't disclosing that they're straight all the time. It's not some thing that needs to be on the forefront or at the start of meetings and conversations and work collaborations. It's irrelevant. I'm a human being that is so much more than just my sexuality. And I think that's also important. One of the things that can be super useful is following LGBTQA plus artists or performers in the industry, whether it's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I follow so many, and it's amazing to see some of the work that some of my colleagues or mentors are doing right now. It's great, and it makes you feel connected and like, wow, I am a part of something, and also remind you that you are enough as you are, and you don't need to be anything else but yourself. Also in music, as some of you will know, you're studying a lot of composers. A lot of them are dead white guys, some of them gay, some of them straight. But, you can seek out repertoire. You can seek out your own choices. There's a whole world of music out there, and you can look for, people of color composers. You can look for queer composers. You can find yourself in the art form if you look past the westernization of music. Like, it's totally possible to find the kind of repertoire that you feel comfortable in and expressing. And I'd also like to note that, I have a lot of privilege as somebody that is a femme presenting person. Yeah, okay, I'm wearing a blazer right now and a collar, so somebody might think, well, she's gay, but the thing is that I pass all the time. So I have a great privilege day to day and in the music industry of that. Whereas somebody that is more androgynous might not have the same experience as me. They might experience a lot more homophobia or transphobia than I have experienced. And as you go, you might also realize that the music community is a little bit more gay, queer, or LGBTQA plus than you thought it was, because there are lots of us queer folks out there in the music industry, and there's certainly a lot of operas that are just pretty queer. So I don't know. Focus on the things that you can control, we'll say.
That's really great, Skylar.
Thanks.
Okay, so now we're going to take a moment to address the live feed on YouTube. So if anybody watching has any more questions, it would be a good time to ask. We have Nackawic High School. Yes, Nackawic High School says, right now, extracurricular music practices are still not permitted in New Brunswick. Do you have any words of hope for our students to keep their spirits up?
It's hard. We're silent because it's hard, I think, because we're all musicians and we're grappling with this every day as well. It's life-changing right now, and it could be changing a lot of things moving forward. But I think that there's a lot of things that you at least can do now whether it's, practicing at home alone or practicing with people within your bubble, or, getting outside and, I don't know, singing or doing something that you wouldn't normally see as something you would do, like, sure, you're missing out on choir, but is there a way that you can then create a choral playlist at home and listen to it? Think of creative and new opportunities for yourself. I think that right now, at least in the music industry at my age, there's so many virtual things going on out there. And while screen fatigue is very real, there's still some pretty cool things going on out there. And it's awesome to see. But I think, this isn't the end game. This is not the end game. We are coming together as a society and community, and we are making change. Research is developing so fast, like Leah said. People are coming together and trying their very best to make it so that it's possible that you'll be able to be back in classrooms and making music together. We don't know how long, we don't know when, but it's definitely going to come, and we just need to hang in there.
Yeah, Skylar said a lot of what's on my mind too right now. I think if you're feeling like it's hard and, you miss doing the things that you love that you can't access right now, then, we absolutely are behind you. We feel the same way. It's hard right now. And that's an unfortunate thing that's happening right now. You're allowed to feel like it's hard. But like Skylar was saying, I think what's inspiring to me is there are so many opportunities and creative things coming out of this that we didn't see before. Even something like this speaker series that I feel so privileged to be a part of is something that's come out of this difficult situation, using the technology that we have at our fingertips to be able to do something collaborative even when we can't all be physically together. And there's some really great opportunities there, maybe to connect with people who aren't in our own regions, who we might not connect with otherwise, where now technology is really inspiring us to be able to do that. And that goes for music opportunities as well. I've seen some really great virtual collaborations, some choral collaborations and things. But yeah, one thing that I keep trying to remind myself is that where we are now is temporary. And we don't know how long temporary is. It's been a long time already, and it may be a long time left to go before some of those things start coming back. But, we're a society that's really inventive and collaborative. And, I have faith that we're going to start to find ways to see those things coming back again in time.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's so hard where the three of us were so involved in the music program in high school that just picturing it without that is like, yeah, that's really challenging. And I don't have that experience to offer any recommendations for. I guess I just wanted to say, like, one of the best pieces of advice I heard early on in the pandemic was not to outsource your happiness. So not to wait until the pandemic's over and cases are down and band is back before you can be happy. And instead just find those things that you can control. And like Maggie was saying, finding those opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise. And so what theater can you watch online? Or are there workshops? Like, have any singers presented a workshop? I know that I watched clarinet videos for fun sometimes. There's some really cool ones out there and things that I wouldn't be doing. But suddenly I really want to play my instrument. And so taking it's hard because you have to take that initiative, but then what can I actually gain out of this, and what can be fun about this, and so that you can kind of look back and see I did make music. It was just a very different kind of music than I'm used to, and I miss band, and it's okay to miss that, and I miss it terribly too. But I guess just what can you do and try to still develop as a musician however you can.
I also think a hard part, I'm assuming with missing things in high school, is the community that you create with your band peeps and your choir friends, that's a huge part of it. So, if you haven't done it already, maybe you could have a group message with some of your choir friends or band friends. Maybe you could have, your own separate game night, because I think that's also part of it. We find ourselves in choir and band at times when we can't find ourselves in other places at school. Like we feel like our nerdy different selves, and we suddenly find ourselves in choir or band. And so I think if you can connect to that community still, even if it's not in a musical way, I think that it'll make you feel a little bit better.
Okay, I think this brings us to the end of our discussion this evening. So on behalf of all of New Brunswick music students, I would like to thank our panelists for sharing their stories and their insights with us. If you're a New Brunswick music student and would like to get involved with the Echo series, please check out our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. There's links in the description below. We are always looking for students to help run our social media, host discussions like I'm doing now, make artwork to promote each discussion, and act as translators. We also encourage students to submit questions for future discussions. The next Echo Series event is Music and Media, Video Games, TV, and Movies, and it will take place in the last week of October. Please follow us on social media for more information. Thank you for joining us and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.